I'm back with another TikTocumentary. This time I will be talking about the abominable reality, the whole truth behind the United States corporation, and how did you become a debt slave. A lot of people do not believe that they are debt slaves, and they don't realize why they have to work jobs. Think about the word job. It was a name in the Bible. It's actually a verse in the Bible, Job. And Job was under persecution heavily. He lost everything and he was constantly tested. So let's dive right into it and not waste any more time. Before I begin, I'd like to go over this disclaimer really quick. TikTok is videos for educational purposes only and protected by the First Amendment right to free speech. The information provided in this presentation is mere fact based on references from the United States Constitution, various Supreme Court cases, and Admiralty maritime jurisdiction. I am not the creator of this information. I do not own it in any way. I have researched a multitude of law books, United States codes, statutes, and Uniform Commercial Code. I am not and would never be an attorney, lawyer, or legal aid. I am in fact a sovereign sentient being sharing knowledge with others like me. I recommend you fact check everything I present. Confidence comes with knowing. The more you know, the more you grow. Let's begin. This is John Smith. John works a full-time job, loves his mom, and was born in a hospital. John lives a normal life as far as he knows, but what John will learn today will blow his mind. John, did you know you were a debt slave? No, you say? You think I'm lying to you? Calm down, John. Let me break it all down to you before you get upset. Your country is not exactly a country. The United States is more like a corporation that operates as a country. I know it's a lot to take in, but let me explain how this happened. In 1913, United States President Woodrow Wilson signed the Federal Reserve Act, and in December 1913, the Federal Reserve was born. The criminal bankers who migrated to America with efforts to repay their debt to the Queen were faced with repaying their debts or dying for committing the horrible crime of usury. The Federal Reserve orchestrated a system that allowed them to create money, but they had no assets to back this money that they intended to create to repay their debts. So they established a debt money system. Usury is the illegal action or practice of lending money at unreasonably high rates of interest, aka loan sharking.
What type of system could a group of stupid criminals come up with?
The type of system that is so subtle that you don't even realize you are still held in bondage by it. That's the type, John. The system they created is set up to trick you into consenting to be taxed, blindsided by ridiculous interest rates, and poor. It's designed for you to work continuously and never have enough to be able to stop working, aka the rat race. This system is so meticulous that even traffic is commercial. They know how to capitalize on your ignorance and then tell you that ignorance of the law is no excuse. Wow. The bankers needed collateral to back their money for their debt money system. Again, they had no assets. A malevolent scheme to make deals with the government was the first step they needed to take to begin this system. In 1929, the United States government filed its third bankruptcy, Chapter 11, via the United States Constitution. Stock markets crashed and the Great Depression was upon all the foreigners, slaves, and criminals who had migrated to America. However, the indigenous peoples of America were not affected by the Great Depression because they were sovereign to the land and had plenty of assets. In 1933, Franklin D. Roosevelt was President of the United States. The Federal Reserve used their influence over the politicians to do what they did next. On March 9, 1933, Roosevelt sent to Congress the Emergency Banking Act, drafted in large part by Hoover's top advisors. The act was passed and signed into law the same day. It provided for a system of reopening sound banks under Treasury supervision with federal loans available if needed. The ability for the Federal Reserve to print debt money at will and out of thin air. I know this is a lot to take in, but I haven't even gotten to the worst parts of this horrific scheme. Take some time to reflect before I move on because I'm getting closer to explaining how all of this applies to you, John. The truth is, the United States government was in big debt, owing $32 billion of that debt to the Queen. With the odds stacked against them and a whole bunch of unsuspecting and dependent folks around the world, they decided to confiscate $2 billion worth of gold from the American people to pay off their debts to the Queen and to fund their new debt money system. In exchange for the American people surrendering their gold and other precious metals, they in exchange gave the people HJR 192 and Federal Reserve notes, aka promissory notes, also known as IOUs because they hold no value. House Joint Resolution 192 was supposed to be the remedy for them removing the gold since there is no more real money. This is the exact executive order that was written by Franklin D. Roosevelt to confiscate the gold from the people. If you look closely at this executive order, you will notice that they use the word persons when they're telling you who are required to deliver the gold to the government. They know that the word persons means corporation, and they also knew that the people did not understand that. I know, John, this is crazy.
Why didn't they teach us this in school?
The answer to that question is a whole other video in itself. In 1934, the Citizenship Act was enacted. This made all children born into the system automatically citizens of the United States Corporation, even if the parents were immigrants. A child born without the United States of alien parents shall be deemed a citizen of the United States by virtue of the naturalization of or resumption of American citizenship by the father or the mother, provided that such naturalization or resumption shall take place during the minority of such child. Truth is, you are not a citizen when you are born. You are a sovereign national to the state that you were born in only. In law, a citizen is a person who, by place of birth, nationality of one or both parents, or naturalization, is granted full rights and responsibilities as a member of a nation or political community. What a sneaky and clever way to ensure that every generation birthed in the United States are automatically a member of the corporation. The added layer to it all is being born in a hospital, which became popular in 1935, which is around the same time as the workings of their system coming together. In 1900, only 5% of all births occurred in hospitals, compared to nearly 75% of urban births and half of all births by 1935, all a part of their evil scheme. You become a debt slave as soon as you are born inside of their corporate facilities, as known as hospitals. You are under Admiralty Maritime Jurisdiction, the law of the sea, aka currency, because you are the current, you see. If that went over your head, then you don't get it, but you'll get it the more that I teach you about this process. Anyway, at the corporate facility, aka the hospital, your mom has to sign a series of paperwork before she is even allowed to give birth. Those documents are contracts, and contracts are how they get your mom's consent to enter you as a debt slave into their system. Those documents give them access to your mind, body, and soul, literally. They use your current energy to fuel their system. Does it all make sense to you, John? Or do you still believe you are free and have a normal life?
This will all make sense after coffee.
Bottom line, there is no money. The green paper that we were taught to call money is a promise to pay. Every time we spend it, we raise the United States national debt. Currently, the national debt is the highest it's ever been in history. And this is not even current. This is when I screenshot it, so you can go look at it. The numbers never stop. And that's due to the fact that the school system, which was also funded by the bankers, was put in place to teach us things that will only make us continue to breed more workers who take orders and never ask questions. Your given name, the name your mom gave you, aka first name, was joined with family name, aka last name, to establish a corporation, a business name. In law, when the first and last name are joined, a corporation is created. When you were registered into their system as a corporation, a bond was issued called the birth certificate. Your birth certificate holds value because it is the articles of organization, the certificate of manifest, which represents you and your transmitting utility, energy, and value. In 1933, the United States government formed under the executive privilege of the original martial rule when the southern states walked out of Congress on March 27, 1861, and quorum to conduct business was lost, went bankrupt, and a new state of national emergency was declared, under which United States citizens were named as the enemy to the government and the banking system as per the provisions of the Trading with the Enemy Act of 1917. You are currently an enemy of the state, and you are committing a huge crime when you spend those FRNs that you call money. Technically, the only people who are supposed to use FRNs are the United States Board of Governors, and the only time that FRNs are supposed to be used is during a time of emergency. That explains why they constantly distract us with orchestrated emergencies like the worldwide pandemic, 9/11, school shootings, public massacres, etc. All free American nationals residing within the Republic of States suddenly and falsely were expatriated via their birth certificates as explained, from their free living status without their knowledge or consent, and their labor, souls, children, property, sweat equity, and credit became the financial collateral for the public debt, which had then been converted into a public trust, which had been scripted after the ancient Roman trust. That's right, Americans became serfs, chattel, property and enemies of the international banking cartel and the United States corporate government. When a child is born, the mother delivers the newborn to an agent, licensed doctor of the state, in a federally funded hospital. She fills out the application for a certificate of live birth while under pain and medication, which creates a title to a public, fictitious entity with a similar sounding name as what the baby is to be called or is to be known as. The difference is that the private free men and women do not have names, especially last names. You have your parental given first and middle from the family of. These are not called names. You are known as. All names are copyrighted by the Rothschild Corporation called the Crown. The hospital then creates a certificate of live birth with what your father's family is known as and is called the last name on the certificate of birth. The hospital immediately files at the county registrar notice of an unclaimed vessel at our delivery ward in Chicago. If it's yours, come pick it up, basically. The population merely thinks those are birth announcements of children being born and therefore never take action to reclaim ownership of the legal title to their own newborn babies. Within 5 days of registering the certificate of live birth at the county registrar, the hospital is then obliged to send the original certificate of live birth title of deed to real property to be registered with the Bureau of Vital Statistics, or in some states, the Department of Health and Rehabilitative Services. In the state of the birth, the state then creates the original birth certificate. After 30 days, the county registrar issues the parents a copy of the warehouse receipt, the certificate of live birth, which now equates to an abandonment of the title for the unclaimed cargo, a vessel, and a ward of the state, solidified by the registration. Next, the state sends this new birth certificate as a payment for its share of constituted bankruptcy debt owed to the United States government, which is a District of Columbia Corporation, to be registered at the United States Department of Commerce, Bureau of Census Executive Office, whom uses the fictitious first, middle, last name, aka all capital letter name, legal name, or straw man, abandoned vessel title, which creates a descendant estate, and CQV Trust as CQV Trust. Government obtains ownership by becoming trustee of the new CQV Trust. The government sees it as will keep it unless or until someone else claims it. It, meaning legal title, the birth certificate to the title of deed to real property, certificate of live birth, and CQV Trust assets, which the baby will later become the res, substance, asset, chattel, property, surety, guarantor of. The Department of Commerce notifies the Department of Treasury of its newly registered asset. The Department of Treasury then issues an interest-bearing bond on the birth certificate, which is title of the CQV Trust. The amount of the bond valuation, usually $630,000 to $1,260 at birth, is derived from International Monetary Fund actuarial tables based on things like time of birth, race, and other spiritual things that they know about us. The Department of Commerce and Department of Treasury are also franchises of the Federal Reserve System, originally a Puerto Rican canon law trust formed in 1913 as a joint stock trust. Its shareholders were other banks whose shares were owned by trusts for a handful of international bankers. Now the Federal Reserve and all government agencies are owned by the IMF, which is owned by trusts controlled by the same international banking cartel. The bonds are then listed with the Securities and Exchange Commission and always sold to the Federal Reserve System, IMF, at face value. The Federal Reserve System, or rather the IMF, then uses the SSKV Trust entity as collateral to issue more Federal Reserve notes when you, the soon-to-be United States citizen, take out some other form of debt obligation, meaning allegedly borrow. See 12 U.S.C. 411, issuance to reserve banks, nature of obligation, redemption. This bond is then held in trust for the Federal Reserve IMF owners by the Depository Trust Corporation under its subsidiary Warehouse Trust Co., LLC, located at 55 Water Street, Suite 3, New York, 141. Interestingly, the name of the building is Tower of Power, and it's on Water Street, the law of the sea. How ironic. So John, every time you filled out an application, registration, or anything that requires your social security number and signature, you entered into an adhesion contract. You unknowingly consented to act as a corporation, a dead man, a debtor, and not the creditor, your innate title and role. In summary, again, once the application for a certificate of live birth is registered, it becomes the unclaimed title of deed to real property. Since it's unclaimed, the state claims it and then creates the birth certificate as the legal title to it. Then the state sends the birth certificate to the federal government. Finally, the federal government creates a bond on the birth certificate, which is their payment, slave bond, to the Federal Reserve, IMF, for the government's bankruptcy debt. It's so funny that the IMF are the same people who own the IRS, and they're the same people who come after you for taxes. All of their systems are one under another because they all go together. You only work a job because you were taught you had to. You were taught that you had bills that you had to pay. You were taught that if you didn't get a job, you would be homeless and poor. Despite the entire time you believe that, you are literally wealthy and never have to pay anything. But you wouldn't know this if you continue to ignore the government corruption that is the recurring theme of our lifetime. These actions are unwritten, unexpressed STKV trusts. The state is the executor, the federal government is the trustee, and the Federal Reserve, IMF, is the beneficiary. The state is a constitutor responsible for paying the debt of the United States government to the Federal Reserve, IMF. Throughout your life, the actions you've taken have left you, the man or woman, with only equitable title to your own body. Exactly the same as when you registered your car with the state. The state takes legal title and the car becomes property of the state. This is why you cannot get the MCO, which is the original title for the vehicle, until you have paid off the lien on the vehicle that the bank holds. They all work together. The state then gives you equitable title to your car. Equitable title means you can use it and do not own it. Hence the reason they require you to insure their vehicle, can charge you fees, fines, and tickets for misusing their vehicle or not following their rules of commerce on the roads. If you wish to challenge the premise, do not pay the next 5 parking tickets. You could cancel your car insurance. How about traveling without your driver's license? Don't pay the annual registration. Drive 140 miles per hour on the way to Vegas, etc. And watch how fast the owner of the vehicle comes to confiscate it with armed men. It is this STKV trust entity which owes all of your alleged mathematically impossible to repay debts to the government and banks. It is this entity which is subject to the tens of millions of victimless crime laws. It is this entity that is required to have permits and licenses, etc., etc. You get the point. You unknowingly became surety / the guarantor for the government-owned and controlled CQV trust entity via contracts, such as applying for a social security number, registering to vote, using the domestic address, and more with the United States Government Corporation. Applying for a social security number with the United States government is where you admitted, under penalty of perjury, that you are a United States citizen rather than a free American national, non-resident alien, or American de jure state citizen, and are the responsible party for the CQV trust entity and are therefore applying for a socialist security tracking number. Oops. Only fictitious entities acting in commerce, federal employees, or officials on federal land, which is Washington, D.C., Guam, Puerto Rico, etc., are required to have tax ID numbers in the de facto United States government's jurisdiction. You're answering to giving the name, birth date, address, and behaving as if you were the legal name or all capital letter name. Example, Jane Mary Doe / John Henry Doe entity, which is the name of the Sestake v. Trust. Also, strengthens the government's presumption that you are it and responsible for it. Sending and receiving mail using the government territorial state abbreviations and zip codes also submitted you to their territorial jurisdiction. You then further solidify you are in fact the CQV Trust entity by applying for a driver's license using the CQV Trust all capital letter name. Free men and women may travel anywhere without licenses. Only slaves or those acting in commerce on the roads are required to obtain licenses. You then crystallize the fact you are the CQV Trust entity and responsible for it even further by signing any government form, applying for any type of license or permit, paying any tickets or government fees of any kind. Worst of all, you sign under penalty of perjury that you are that entity living on federal land and are a federal employee when you filed your first and every single income tax. You became a fictitious entity when you signed the Social Security application under the penalty of perjury, claiming you are the registered owner of the name. Apply for a state ID or driver's license with the DMV. Apply for a passport and sign under the penalty of perjury, claiming you are the registered owner of the name. And register to vote, also signing under the penalty of perjury, claiming that you are the registered owner of the name. But don't worry, John. Everything you did unknowingly can be undone and you can reclaim your sovereign status, title, and role as the beneficiary of the CQV Trust. However, this journey requires that you call your power back in all ways and rescind/revoke every and all contracts on the record that make you responsible for the all caps name/fictitious entity. If you are ready to take the journey, there are a few steps you must take to begin. Are you truly ready, John? If you are ready to start the journey to become free, subscribe to this channel, like this video, share this video, and comment below, I'm ready. Each video I post will help you comprehend this process further and what steps you must take to reclaim your sovereign title, role, and status as the beneficiary for the CQV Trust in your name. If you like how I teach and would like to join my private community, consider joining my Patreon at www.patreon.com/divinetrustbabies or joining my Divine Trust Babies Academy, where I have every step with examples, instructions, support, and a private Telegram group at divine-trust-babies.trainercentralsite.com/course/Divine Trust Babies Academy. And if you just want to purchase content, courses, or more, you can go to linktr.ee/Divine Trust Babies to purchase courses, content, and packages. And last but not least, thank you for watching this video. Please share this with someone who needs to know the truth. I want to thank you guys for supporting me. I really appreciate that. And I encourage you guys to continue to watch my videos for more clarity on this process, because I'm very transparent and I share every step of my personal journey through this process from the beginning where I started all the way up into where I am now. So again, thank you for watching this video. Please like, comment, subscribe, share, and I'll continue to post videos every week.